please. Oh, please.
Hello. Alright. So Candace was up on Daisy's panel talking about Candace's new YouTube channel, trying to get her up to 1,000 subs. There's barely any mention of Summer through pretty much all of this, but Candace tells us about her past and talks about her other kids a little bit. She has no problem. Candace has no problem talking about all of this that she talks about, but she's not worried about any of it being twisted. But if you ask her about the day Summer was reported missing and her 3-hour time gap, then she shuts down because she says she doesn't want people to twist her words. It just doesn't make sense to me. It does, however, make sense if I think that Candace has guilty knowledge. Then it makes sense why she would be so open about anything except Summer's disappearance. You ask her about any discrepancies or suspicious things and that her and Don have said, and she feels like she's being interrogated and she can't remember important details anyways. But she remembers small things that seem insignificant. It adds up to guilty knowledge in my head. But let's see what you all think. Daisy also plays part of her live from the previous night, and Candace was telling her story from the past. Yeah, it was, I think it's titled, let me look. I think it's just titled Candace Talks About Her Past. Let's see. Yeah. It's called Summer Wells, Candace's new channel. And then the other live that she brings up in this live and talks about from the day before was called Candace Opens Up About Summer. All right. Really, it's not really that much about Summer, but that's what it's called. So, all right, she was talking about her other kids from Andrew, and she talks about what her relationship was like with Andrew. She talks about her other daughter that she had before she had Josie. She gave her away to the state after she was born because she was going down a bad path and was homeless. It's not easy to listen to this because I have so much to say that it keeps me on the edge of my seat. But Daisy seems to think that Don and Candace are not suspects because Ronnie Lawson did not come directly out and say Don Wells and Candus Bly are suspects in Summer's disappearance. But he basically did, because he did say everyone was a suspect when asked on the news if they had any suspects. He was talking about everyone that was around Summer on June 15th, 2021, which would be Don and Candace, Grandma, and everyone else that was around Summer on June 15th, or closely involved in her life. There were probably close by people in the holler that were being looked at initially, I'm sure. We know Jody Sue was ruled out because we heard Detective Pruitt say that she wasn't a suspect. They probably have ruled out the majority of the holler, honestly. If they're saying Jody is not a suspect, then that pretty much tells me that it's definitely Dawn, Candace, and Grandma that are the primary suspects, because Jody was very suspicious to me and a lot of people for a long time, and still is to some people. And I know there's no way law enforcement didn't see any of the things that we saw. I'm sure they were suspicious of Jody at one point in some way or another. Um, I mean, after all, they said the scream was unfounded, so, but anyways, also, when TBI Leslie Earhart, when she says that they weren't going to classify um cooperation at this time, they were basically saying that no, the parents are not cooperating. And that's what I feel like Ronnie Lawson was saying about when he was asked about if anybody's a suspect, when he said everybody's a suspect, because he didn't want to come right out and say the parents are suspects, because obviously this is still an open investigation and they're still trying to find Summer. And if they do have something on Don and Candace, they obviously don't want to come out and say what that is, and they are probably keeping them out of jail if they do have something on them, because they want to make sure they have all their ducks in a row before they come with anything. And not only that, but it could be part of an investigative tactic to try and find Summer. I mean, that's what's really the most important thing here. But yeah, they're the primary suspects. Really, Candace and Grandma are the primary suspects, probably, because Don was allegedly at work all day, even though I have a hard time believing it, just because of the fact that he so badly wants us to believe that he was at work all day that day, up until Summer disappeared. Although it would not have been impossible for Candace to have taken Summer to Don at or near his job sometime that day. But Don is more desperate for us to believe that he had no interaction with Summer the day she disappeared than he is to find Summer, or than his plea is for Summer. He's more desperate for us to believe that he didn't have any interaction with Summer that day. It couldn't have been him, right? Why? Don wants us to believe that Summer was abducted, and even so does Grandma. Candace wants us to believe that someone snatched her up too. Maybe Grandma just knows what Candace and Don have told her, and she can tell Candace is lying, but she doesn't want her to go to prison, so she doesn't tell anyone what she really thinks. And maybe that's why she talks so little. People seem to think that if law enforcement had anything on Don or Candace, that they would have them locked up by now. But that's not true. They haven't found Summer yet, and it hasn't even been quite 2 years just yet. And they could still be trying to actively gather evidence, which I'm confident that they are, because this is not known to be a cold case. Ellie has yet to state that. Hopefully that will never be the case. Look how long it takes to make arrests in other cases. It takes time. They still have yet to find Summer, so they could be using Don and Candace as a tactic, like I said, to try to find Summer. And maybe they just need that one last piece of the puzzle, Summer herself. Look at the Orrin and Orson West case. They still haven't found either one of them. And now Jackie and Trezell are going down for their murder. And the cops knew since the beginning what the siblings said about seeing the boys die. And they didn't have any evidence yet at that point, just what the boys have said. So they had to move on with the investigation until they got the evidence that they needed. The boys are still missing. LE interviewed them and documented it all, and it's all just now coming out. And that was in 2020, not a year, but it was like 6 months before Summer even came up missing. Daisy says people are stealing Summer's picture. Daisy said Candace put out really beautiful pictures of Summer and people stole them. Well, and I'm sorry, but if Candace put those out on a public platform, then nobody actually stole them. But anyways, now why would Daisy care about that if Candace didn't even care? Candace said it's all good. It didn't bother her. Don't you want people sharing Summer's picture, Daisy? I was a little thrown off by that. No hate, just saying. I think any picture Candace posts of Summer should be shared as much as possible, right? Are we all in agreement with that? I would love to see some new pictures of Summer that haven't been seen before, and it doesn't have to be in private so people can use them for content. Just be loud and proud with Summer's pictures and put it out there. Why wait? Daisy says Candace has got her own channel now, and she was telling Candace about getting her watch hours. She is trying to help Candace get monetized. Daisy says Candace's birthday was the other day, so she was going to throw Candace's Cash App up on her banner on her live. She said, "Don't come for me, it's her birthday." She didn't ask me to do it. So Candace's birthday was over a week before this, but whatever. That's not really important. I don't see how Candace could even feel comfortable taking money from people still after being called out by Kathy for being underhanded with people and taking people's money dishonestly. They all talk over each other really bad, and Candace doesn't really say anything for a few minutes. I can't even understand what's going on because everyone is talking about different things. People are asking Sherry to pray for them in the chat, and a couple prayers are said. Mother's Day is brought up on panel. Candace says she is probably just going to lay in bed all day that day, which is today, so happy Mother's Day to all the mamas out there. Everyone tells Candace not to just lay in bed all day. I wonder if she's going to end up coming live and milking the sympathy, or if she truly will be down in the dumps on Mother's Day. I don't hope that anyone is ever down in the dumps, but I would expect to see that from Candace, you know? She should feel the burn, especially hard on Mother's Day, considering her situation. I would feel bad for her if I thought she was innocent, but I don't, so I just feel neutral. I don't feel good that Candace will be hurting on Mother's Day. I just don't care because it's something that she has brought on herself that she could have corrected a long time ago. Her substance abuse seems to have destroyed a lot of her life and some of other people's lives. I think Summer had to suffer her entire life because of it. And I think Candace knew that, but she did nothing to fix it because she felt like she was stuck there on that hill doing that shit that she was doing. But even through all the help that she's been offered, she turned everything down or backed out and still hasn't changed. The thing that gets me is it's clear that Candace had a way out at some point. She could have gone away while Don was away if he was really the problem. She could have kept him in jail instead of filling out the paper for the judge to dismiss Don's charges when the cops came in October, when Candace claimed she feared for her and her children's safety and she thought Don was going to hurt her mom. Candace claims that Don hits her. Don talks very vulgar around children and to his victims from his past. I certainly hope he never hit Candace in front of the kids, but the kids were there when that incident happened in October. He just doesn't seem like a good person. Candace at least comes off as having somewhat of a good heart and being somewhat empathetic sometimes, but they both come across as selfish and neglectful, in my opinion. They both come across as highly addicted and unwilling to change, even when given multiple opportunities. Don seems like the one to be abusive. Candace seems more neglectful. That's just my opinion. Don seems neglectful too, though. It would make more sense to me that Don did something to Summer and got her gone than if Candace did, as in hurt her in some way. But that would mean that one of his 7 alibis is a lie and not completely true. He would have had to have been home on the 15th before he said he was and went back to work before they called 911, right? Or Summer would have got gone before June 15th, and there really isn't any definitive proof of life for Summer on June 15th, possibly. Because Candace was the one that had Summer. She was the one that physically had custody of Summer that day, not Don, is what I'm saying. But if Don really was there, then that would mean that somebody at Tucker is lying about seeing him there all day, or he snuck off without anybody noticing and then came back. You know what I'm saying? Candace doesn't seem as guilty to me as Don does, but I think they both know what happened, or at least have a pretty good idea. Candace might be empathetic and kind-hearted deep down, but she is shady and scandalous, in my opinion. It's just calling it how I see it, and I'm not trying to be rude. That's just the best way I can think to describe her. She's empathetic, loves animals, loves her kids, loved having her kids at home with her and enjoying herself, doing her thing on her time by her terms. But she also is shady and scandalous and uses people. And she's lazy. You can be more than one thing in life. Some people are also very good at coming across genuine and kind-hearted when they're actually jaded deep down. You can't really blame me for thinking that after everything we've heard about Candace lying to people to get money, for example, her going along with Don tormenting his stepsisters after what he did to them, and all the pranks they have done in Summer's name. And now she's trying to get monetized for content that people want to be about Summer that's not going to be. It's always like pulling teeth to get one little disappointing detail, like what did she eat that day? And then it turns out to be a freaking hot dog, really? And people are still sending her money. It doesn't bother me that Candace gets money from people. People can spend their money however they want. I don't care. What bothers me is it seems like Candace cares more about that than she does about advocating for her daughter. She just gives up and wants to collect benefits off Summer's case without contributing anything to Summer. Candace went around to everyone that she could and got whatever she could out of them and never gave anything to anybody to benefit Summer. Like, not even some new information or some new photos to hang or a few stories to share. Nothing. She won't even talk about the 3 missing hours from June 15th that Ronnie Lawson asked about, or give us any more detail than what she has given Chris McDonough in the beginning. Candace says she will be able to talk to her mom for Mother's Day. Well, that's great. I wonder if Candace finds any comfort from her mother on Mother's Day. Grandma doesn't really seem like the loving type. Grandma actually seems really mean and kind of scary to me, from what I've heard of her. I remember Hunter saying Grandma was crazy that day, talking about June 15th. I wonder what he meant by that. They talk about Candace's new YouTube channel some more. Daisy's really trying to get Candace monetized. Daisy tells her chat she appreciates people being nice to Candace and says that for every person that's mean to Candace, she sees 10 or 15 people that are nice to her. Well, I'm glad that there are people out there that are just so nice that they see past all the bad things and just try to look at the positive things about Dawn and Candace. But that does not negate all the red flags and suspicious things that they do and say, and all the games that they've been playing with people in Summer's name. All the help they've turned down, everything they've backed out of, the fact that they are suspects and have yet to be cleared. Some people just are not willing to see those things because they think innocent until proven guilty, or because they're so damaged themselves from what they have been through in their life that they're blinded and don't see all the bad things about Dawn and Candace. I try to see all the good and the bad. I just try to see what's right in front of me and look at things objectively despite how I feel. A lot of people are respectful and also bite their tongues a lot. She does not hear what a lot of people actually think. There are a lot of people that support both Dawn and Candace because they believe what Daisy pushes, which is what Dawn and Candace push, which is abduction, and that the parents are innocent. They're great parents that loved their kids and they did their best. Well, I, for one, do not agree with that. Whether Daisy truly in her heart believes that or not, I don't know. Maybe she truly believes Candace, but has her reservations about Don. But she knows voicing her true opinions about Don will deter them from talking to her and probably get her cussed out or make them talk badly about her. I don't know how Daisy really feels about Don, but I really think she's actually on Candace's side in real life. And I'm not saying that makes Daisy any less of a woman, that she doesn't have it in her to tell Don what she really thinks, if that's the case, because at this point, I don't see how she could really think that Don's a wonderful parent and had absolutely nothing to do with Summer's disappearance and knows nothing about it. I don't see how she could really be on Don or Candace's side, but I mean, she has her reasons and whatever. She's free to think what she wants. I'm not here to tell anybody how to think, but I'm definitely going to say how I feel. I just wish Daisy would just say how she really feels. There's no way, after everything Dawn has said and done, especially even on her sister's channel, that Daisy does not see that Dawn is not the best role model for children at the very least. The way Don talks to and in front of his young grandson, for example, that cannot be any older than 6 or 7, that alone should open Daisy's eyes, about Don at least. Does that mean Don is guilty of getting Summer gone? No, of course not. That would be ridiculous to say. What I'm saying is it shows Don's character, and it shows that he's not the man that he tries to portray himself to be, in my opinion. I know Daisy thinks what normal is daddy running around shooting up the house, but you should want better. Aim higher. See that there is a better way to live and that a child should never have to deal with anything even close to that. That's unsettling and stressful and chaotic for a child to have to grow up like that. Likewise, for a child to have to grow up with parents that have DV problems and get highly intoxicated on a daily basis and have a toxic relationship. Any lifestyle like that for a child is just asking for future mental health struggles. If you cannot eventually realize that and find a way out, you will lose your kids one way or another, or they will have to grow up like that and suffer because of you. When you have already seen it happen to several of your own children and you still don't find a way to make your life better so you can have children successfully, and you just keep having more and more children and not changing your ways, of course you're not going to get a better outcome. If anything, it's going to be worse, which in Don and Candace's case now, it is worse because they didn't just lose custody this time, they actually lost a whole child. Summer is hidden from the whole world. Candace is asked if she knows why the 911 calls have not been released, and Candace says she does not know. Daisy says it's probably part of the investigation, like the timeline, and they probably don't want anyone to know because then everyone will talk about it. I don't know where Daisy gets the idea that law enforcement wants to keep the timeline a secret. In fact, I remember Ronnie Lawson stating on the news before that Candace needed to think about her timeline because there's 3 hours unaccounted for. So how is that trying to keep it a secret? I think Ronnie Lawson has a lot to say and about the Wells, but he just can't. The phones were allegedly deleted from 3:30 p.m. on June 15th, according to Don. But Don could have deleted all of that himself and just blamed it on law enforcement. He said from the get-go that he does not trust law enforcement. That tells me that law enforcement was going to be against them, and that was going to be his way of getting ahead of it by saying, see, I told you I didn't trust them. Which is funny because he also said that he would go hang out with them in the beginning. You never know with Don. Don comes on and says hi for a second and says he's off to bed. Candace is eating some chips and drinking a Mountain Dew, and everyone is chatting about nothing in particular, kind of all talking over each other, as usual. Candace says someone asked her if she was running to Mexico, and she said no because she's too fat. Remember, Candace doesn't walk or run anywhere. I'm glad Candace can joke about people thinking she is guilty and going to run. It's not something that I could ever see them doing successfully. If law enforcement wanted to find them, I think they would know where to find them. All right, so I'm going to skip over a few minutes of them chatting about Summer's day and thinking it would be cool to do a little fingerprint station for the kids on Summer's day. All right, then White Boy Radio comes on panel. He says he loves Don, tells him to stay away from Cher, says shenanigans, that one. His words, not mine. White Boy says he was joking around in Daisy's chat about hot dogs and someone turned it into something it wasn't, and they talk about that drama for a few minutes and talk about how much hate people have for Don and Candace, that it's unbelievable. Whoa, I think there are some people that hate Don and Candace, and there's people that spread a lot of negativity, but I think the majority of people on here that do not particularly like Don or Candace and think they have guilty knowledge or whatever, most of those people are still respectful and not hateful, even when speaking their minds and speaking directly to Don and Candace. Yes, there is a lot of hate. There's also a lot of love and a lot of indifference and a lot of passion on these streets. It's just how it is. Neither Don nor Candace have to be here. In fact, they were told not to be here, but that did not deter them. Tim Mullen even tried to keep them offline. That didn't work either. Daisy talks about people that have been getting a lot of content off of her. Who, Daisy, like me? She says because they don't have content. So who, Daisy? People like me are creating content off of Daisy's lives because she's sucking up so much to Don and Candace through all their bullshit and co-signing their bullshit that they're sticking with her as she runs Candace's Cash App, and they hardly ever talk about Summer, even when the live is titled Summer. And when they do, it's so little, so vague, and so disappointing. I don't stream Daisy's content because I can't think of anything else on my own. It's because Don and Candace are talking on her panel. And when they say things that I feel need to be talked about, I talk about it. It does not matter if it's on Daisy's channel or anyone else's. I reference Daisy's content because sometimes Don and Candace actually say some pretty shocking things on there. And there's a lot of things that they say that I don't talk about because I find it totally irrelevant. And quite frankly, I'm not interested in anything they have to say unless it's about Summer, her family, her life, unless it's about Don and Candace's life, because they're Summer's parents. So obviously, I want to know as much about them as possible too, to try and get the best look I can into Summer's life. So what are you hating on? But they talk about a lot of off-topic, non-relevant things a lot of times that have nothing to do with Summer or her case. White Boy says people need to get a freaking life and leave Don and Candace alone. Well, unfortunately, White Boy, that's not going to happen. Do you think it's fun to have to talk about Summer's parents like this? Do you think that people like me get a kick out of it? Because it's not fun. I wish they were different and made different choices. I wish they were good people for their children's sake. People have a life. People around here that cover Summer's case, people like me, for example, a lot of them actually are pretty well off for themselves and live good lives with their families and also cover Summer's case. There's people like me that are self-employed and make their own schedule, and also am a full-time mother as my son goes to work with me since I'm blessed to be able to do that. And I make time as much as I can to cover Summer's case, and I'm not going anywhere. And a lot of other people that cover Summer's case, they do it full time because they do YouTube full time for their job, and there ain't nothing wrong with that. And that is having a life, and they are successful, and they are good people. So I don't know what you're talking about. I happen to think that Don and Candace are guilty in Summer's disappearance, and I'm not afraid to say it. I got the Amber Alert on my phone June 16th, 2021, and I was instantly pulled in. And Summer had my heart the first time I ever heard her name before I even saw her picture. Then I saw her picture, and she had those bright blue eyes just like my baby boy who was only born a couple weeks before she went missing. And I could see Summer in my son's eyes. And I just fell in love. And I feel like I know her personally, spiritually. Then I realized she was the exact same age, down to 3 days apart from my daughter. So I really have a lot of reasons why I feel close to her. That's how I keep track of how long it's been, because my son was born at the exact same time, basically. Anyways, so white boy, are we supposed to just ignore all the red flags? Do we really need to sit here right now and go over all the red flags? Do you truly not notice, or do you just believe so strongly in innocent until proven guilty, so deeply that you will not see the red flags until the law says they're guilty? We're not a court of law here, see? We're allowed to think they're guilty. We're allowed to say we think they're guilty. Don comes up on panel, even though he said he was going to bed. White boy talks about how people are looking for a picture of Summer that has not been on a thumbnail yet, as if that's a way to get more views on a video. I've never even thought about it like that. It would be awesome to see some pictures of Summer that we've never seen before so we can share them and more people can see her picture, and it's just one more thing to talk about Summer. I think it would be a great thing to have some new pictures of Summer that we've never seen before. I would absolutely love that. People here have a lot of compassion and are generally here because they feel close to the case. If you're here for money only, you're going to out yourself, because people can sense when someone is fake and when someone really does not have any compassion for what they're doing. White boy reminds Don to stay away from Cher. I don't know what Cher did. She actually gave us a lot of Don and Candace content, which is what we want when they're being respectful. Well, we want the truth, really. We want to see how they really, truly act, even if it's ugly, because we want to see the truth for Summer. If Don and Candace know something about what happened to Summer and they're not telling, they can't just get away with that. I think it's stupid to think that Don and Candace both don't know more than they've told law enforcement. They're clearly hiding something, in my opinion. I almost wonder if they stick around to hear what people are saying and just to hear what people know or think they know. It just sucks that there are some people that take advantage of it and all the drama and lose sight of Summer just for the sake of their content, when it's supposed to be all about Summer and a look into her life through trying to understand her parents. A lot of people do not like Cher. A lot of people are die hard for Cher. I never had a problem with her, although I'm pretty sure I'm blocked over there for some reason, or I definitely was at some point, but it's all good. I don't like everyone. I don't like drama. It's exhausting. It's distracting. I'm there for the content, not the content creator. If someone does something that I don't like, that doesn't mean I don't like that person. If someone does not like me, that's their problem. I'm not here for that. That doesn't even matter. But anyways, back on subject. Daisy pulls up her live from the night before and goes through it for a little while because she thought it was important for people to hear what Candace had to say. Candace says she can't watch FBI files and stuff because it makes her break down. I thought that was a really interesting thing to say because those shows usually involve murder and SA and terrible things like that, not missing children so much. Well, yeah, missing children that usually are SA'd and murdered. She says she has to watch comedy, otherwise she will be up all night. That could be for many reasons, like stress, anxiety. Given her situation, I'm sure she's under a lot. So guilty or not, Candace talks about a bad dream that she had. She told Daisy about her nightmare, and she said she always sees it in her head now, this nightmare that she had. Daisy said she knows it's hard to find peace not knowing where your baby is, but God will bring you peace. One second. Right. Sorry, I had to get a drink. So Candace has a dream with a guy's face, right? This is what she's telling Daisy. Um, she says some guy came busting through the wall, shaking vigorously. He wouldn't speak, and they were all freaked out in the house. So she laid down, she went to bed, she started having this dream that somebody like busted through their wall at their house up on 110, and everybody was home, and it freaked everybody out, and she could just see his creepy face, but she can't describe it. It was just really creepy. And she said they tried calling people and nobody would answer. They couldn't get anybody to help. And she said it was just the scariest dream she's ever had in her life. She said she woke up and ate a snack and drank some Mountain Dew, and when she went back to sleep, she had another nightmare. She said she was scared to death by it. Daisy said maybe it's the devil trying to torment you. Daisy asks if Candace has had any dreams about summer like Don has. Don dreamt of summer running through the Johnson grass, and it was beautiful, and she was as beautiful as he's ever seen. And he's like, Summer, where were you? And she's like, I was just up the road. Remember? And then Dudley tells us Don dreamt of beating the fuck out of his kids. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. That just slipped. Which dreams, so yeah, Candace says she does have dreams about summer, but she doesn't want to say it on live because people will just tear it apart. Whatever. Candace says she knows Summer is alive, and she thinks that whoever has her, because she knows someone has her. Hold on, I have to cough. She says she thinks that she knows that someone has Summer, and she thinks that they're just sitting back and watching all of this and laughing. Candace said Summer is alive in her dreams. She said Summer is her whole life. She would wake up next to her and fall asleep next to her every night. She said she did that with all her kids, and it didn't bother her one bit. She loved it, she says. I wonder if Summer really went to bed at night, and then her parents went shortly after. Or did they let Summer stay up and party with them and sleep wherever? I think they stayed up late and were loud and had people in and out and made the kids stay in the basement. I wonder if they did let the kids party with them, though, because a lot of parents actually do that, which is shameful when there's drugs and violence going on, or if it's impairing their sleep and wellness. But I guess we'll never know. Don and Candace make it sound like they had this routine where they all went to bed at a decent hour every night, and that was that, and everything was calm and cool and collected at the home, but I just don't see it that way. I could be totally wrong. Candace talks about how her grandpa and her were really close. He was a Vietnam vet, and she wasn't really close with her grandma. She was also close to a couple of her uncles. She didn't name which ones, but I noticed that Candace is close with the males in her family, but not the females. Interesting. People in chat are thanking Candace for talking and letting her know they believe her. Candace says she loves each and every one of her children. She says even the ones that she had before Summer and the boys. Candace and Andrew. Candace says her oldest daughter, Candace Floden, will not talk to her. YouTube has gotten to her and made her believe all these evil things about Candace, according to Candace. She says YouTube people got to her and whispered in her ear and destroyed everything they had going on because Candace said that she was talking to her and they were on good terms. Candace said her daughter, Candace Floden, basically then told her to F off and did not want to talk to her anymore. Candace says she will still love her from afar. Candace says she doesn't know where people got that she pulled a gun on CPS. Daisy actually said that on a live herself recently, using it as an example of how much Candace loves her kids, which raised my eyebrows, to say the least. She said the CPS Okay, Candace, she said the CPS worker came to her house and there was a gun sitting by the door. She said someone laid it there when they got back from hunting or whatever, and it just got left there, according to Candace. And when CPS came, they just saw a gun just laying there when they walked in, and it must have startled them enough to get a story out of it, right? Someone told that story to someone else and it got taken out of context down the line, probably. But was that gun in the reach of the children? If the gun wasn't locked up, that's a problem. And if CPS would have came and they saw the gun just laying out, not locked up, that would have been a problem for them. There must have been a little more to that, in my opinion. Candace makes it sound like it was no big deal, but it obviously was because we got a story out of it in the first place, right? Candace says she doesn't know where people got that from. Daisy said she heard it on the YouTube streets, and Candace says, well, there you go. As in, it's not reliable because you heard it on YouTube. Candace says CPS in Wisconsin is a joke. She says CPS is different in every state. Candace says when she was a kid, she acted out because she didn't think her family loved her. Maybe Candace was not raised being shown love and affection until she was getting older, and by then it was too late. She was already jaded. She says she was in foster care and it's been a crazy life. She said people just don't realize what people go through. A lot of people here on YouTube have actually been through a lot ourselves, which has brought us here into the true crime community in the first place, from what I've seen at least. I think people are probably a lot more understanding than she's giving credit for. I think Candace is hiding something very big in regards to Summer's disappearance, and it makes her paranoid. And she always thinks everybody is out to get her and is interrogating her when they're actually just asking simple questions or speaking their mind. She feels the heat, so to speak. Candace says she had to do stuff and protect herself from inhumane people growing up. She said she remembers one time she was in a group home in Wisconsin and she was only 12 and a song came on, Only God Knows Why. And she sat up there on her bed and they didn't ask if she needed anything to eat or drink or if she needed any blankets or anything. And it was a very evil place. She said kids would bully her and push her around. She said she finally went to a foster home where they actually cared about kids. So Candace was shown love and had caring guardians at one point at least. She said she graduated from her high school in Wisconsin. Candace said a lot of people say she didn't graduate, but she did. I've actually never heard anyone say anything about Candace dropping out of high school. And even if she did, I don't think that would have any bearing on anything related to Summer. She said her first kid's dad would tell her to run, and he would shoot above her head with a shotgun while she was running away. She said she was afraid of him. Yeah, I would be too. But she had 2 kids with him. If he's shooting at you, girl, you gotta go. Especially if you got 2 kids with him. That should be your reason to leave. She said he would psychologically abuse her and say if she left him, he would take the kids. I can see the signs of abuse in Candace, to be honest, and I think she's abused by Don too. We've heard Jody say it and we've kind of seen it. She just compares Don to Andrew and says Don isn't as bad as Andrew, so she thinks Don is great. She said they lived in an itty bitty camper. She said when he came home, if he didn't like dinner that she cooked, he would throw his plate against the wall and cuss her out. That's really sad if he did that around the kids, especially. He probably did act like that around the kids, and that's probably why they were taken. I don't know what part Candace really played in all that. She probably hung around for the drugs if she was using then, because that's why a lot of women stay with an abusive man most of the time is because they're on drugs. Either that or they're just scared because the man threatens to kill them if they leave. Or I guess it could be vice versa with the man or the woman, but you get what I'm saying. She said she had a traumatic childhood and teenage years that she does not tell anyone about. I wonder why Candace doesn't confide in her mother. Why is her mother even coming around if they're not close? They don't seem to be close because Grandma was not around when Candace was growing up, and she left when Summer came up missing. She wasn't even there for Candace then. And when Candace talks about her life, she talks like she does not have anyone to confide in. But what about her mom and her husband? Candace says she has a scar on her arm because when she was leaning against Andrew's truck one time, he got mad and flew up the driveway, and she had to go get stitches because it ripped her whole arm up. Andrew sounds like a real piece. Candace says Don is much better than Andrew. Daisy says, I think your oldest daughter went through a lot too. Candace says someone told her oldest daughter that Candace beat the crap out of her and her brother with a baseball bat when they were little, and that's not true. And she asked where her daughter heard that from, and she said from her foster parents. This has always blown me away and boggled my brain. Why in the blue hell would Candace and Andrew's foster parents make up such a heinous lie? They could have said something that wasn't so graphic. I can't imagine why a foster parent would tell a child something like that, even if it was true, unless they're just trying to make them hate their biological parents. But true or not, that's so extreme. Were the children abused by their foster parents? Were they treated well? Because saying things like that to a child is pretty concerning. Someone is lying. Candace says her third child in Arkansas, she had her and her dad was hooked on stuff that no one could imagine. I think she means he was on drugs really heavily, and so he overdosed on morphine patches. She said he was a good guy. She said she was still young at that point, only 20 years old. She said social services came and she had them take her daughter because she was going down a bad road and she was homeless. So that was a daughter that she had in between her oldest daughter and Summer. She was probably doing dope around that time. So she did the right thing giving the baby up, in my opinion. She could have ended up dead if Candace was really on drugs and homeless and going down a bad road as she says she was. Because a lot of children do end up dead from neglect, abuse, whatever, when they live that lifestyle. I wonder if Candace ever started to go down a good path or if she just stayed on that same bad path this whole time, because it seems like she has not changed her path yet to me. It's not fair her children had to walk that path with her, and she eventually realized it and still kept going the same way. She said her and Don had their firstborn and moved out to help Don's mom, and she wasn't doing too good because she was sick. She said Don's mom loved her. She had to help change her diapers and bathe her and everything else. She said she was inseparable with Josie. She said she had Wyatt right after Don's mom passed away. So one goes in, one goes out. They had Waylon, then they had Summer. Candace says she was so in love. She said Josie and Wyatt look a lot alike, and Waylon and Summer look a lot alike. Candace says she can't do this on her channel because she gets all tongue-tied, but she can do it on Daisy's because she just feels like she's just chatting with Daisy. I can actually understand that because when you go live, it feels like a lot, like all the thoughts just go out of your head and your words don't come out like you want them to. It's just social anxiety, but it's much easier when you have someone to talk with, even just reading the chat. But Daisy says Candace is an empath. Candace says she can't be mean to people because she feels bad for them. She says Summer and Waylon were not allowed to go to the creek by themselves and they had to take their walkie-talkies when they did. I know this sounds like a good rule, but actually paying attention and enforcing those rules is another thing. Did Candace actually pay that close of attention and enforce those rules? I only wonder because she always tries to make it sound like she was hovering over Summer like a helicopter mom, and I just don't think it's true. I believed Jose when he said Summer would run off all the time and Candace would lose track of her a lot. Doesn't mean she didn't love her kids. It just means she was not attentive to the point where it was neglectful, in my opinion. Is that why Summer is missing? Candace said all kids love the creek. She lived in the creek when she was a kid. Candace said she used to go back in the holler and take their sleds and their snowboards out, and you had to be careful because you would hit a pocket sometimes and go into the water and get all soaked and be freezing cold and have to run back to the house. They definitely liked to have fun and get wild, in my opinion. The kids probably loved that. I'm glad to hear that the kids at least got to get out and have fun sometimes. I get the feeling that their kids had a lot of really good times and a lot of really bad times. I feel in my heart like their life was extreme. I don't think they had much stability and normalness in their life. Mary, Don's stepsister, says Don used to shoot up in her bathroom, but she doesn't know what kind of drugs it was. When her kids were there, and she had to kick him out of her house for it. Don, that makes me wonder if he, in his own home, around his own kids, did those things. Because addicts continue to use until they change their lifestyle. I don't think Don ever changed his lifestyle. They talk about Candace being an empath again. I don't see Candace as an empath. I think she could be an empath underneath her addiction, but I think it's all masked by her using. I think that happens to a lot of addicts. Candace doesn't seem to care about people as much as she acts like she does because she just uses people. And if she really even cared about Summer as much as she says she does, she would take the help that's being offered. She would change her ways and aim to do better. That's just my opinion. Candace said Summer was never allowed to go to the creek by herself. I get the feeling she did, though. She said Wyatt and Josie were allowed to go to the creek by themselves, but they had to have their walkie-talkies and answer right away. Candace is asked if she ever made the boys lay on hot pavement. Remember, that's what Leslie Hill said to Chris McDonough. She said, "Man, I never did that. They did that on their own." She said when they got out from going swimming, they got cold, and the pavement is hot, and it feels good and makes them warm. So that would explain why Leslie said that, because she could have just mistaken what was happening. But who knows if Candace really did that? Who was telling the truth? Who was lying? Who knows? Don in the background said he did that when he was a kid too. Candace said she doesn't know Leslie. She said she only met her one time. She said she doesn't know what her agenda was, but she's sorry she passed away. Maybe Leslie was told stories by Allie and her family, and that's why she did not like Candace. Maybe she believed all the things Allie said, and maybe she knew some things about Candace that Candace didn't know that Allie told her. Candace says she never understood why Allie would say, "Ha ha, they got your kid," when they were at the parade. I know Allie said she didn't even go to the parade, so I'm seriously wondering if that even happened. Don says it happened two different ways. First, he said something like, ha ha, someone got your kid or something, or ha ha, you lost your kid or something like that. But then it changed to, ha ha, they got your kid. He says it different both times. But it really makes me wonder, why would Don make something like that up? Is it to make Allie look like she knew someone kidnapped Summer because they're pushing abduction? Or was it just to make Allie look bad because Allie's trying to make Don and Candace look bad? I don't know. But I have a hard time believing Allie really said that, considering she says she wasn't even there, and that's just a stupid thing to say. Candace said Allie allowed her kids to stay with Candace, and she wouldn't let them just do whatever they wanted like teens like to do. But Allie, on the other hand, would just let her kids do whatever they wanted to do. And Candace would tell Allie, "You cannot raise your kids like that." This is true. You cannot let your kids run all over you, but I don't think Candace is exactly in the position to be giving parenting advice, just saying. Candace says if you let the kids do that now, then they're going to control you and they're going to run you. She's right, though. It's just easier to let the kids do whatever they want because then you don't have to waste your energy correcting them or enforcing the rules, because that's just lazy parenting. Daisy says, yeah, that's true. Daisy says she thinks those kids really did care about Candace because she would take them to do stuff and hang out with them. She said, yeah, Allie would call her anytime she needed someone to watch Hunter because she couldn't control him. So Candace would be like, okay, no problem. So Allie would trust Candace to take Hunter because she couldn't control him, even though she let Hunter do whatever he wants anyways. Then why would she be worried about controlling him? Doesn't make sense. And is Candace really the responsible party to entrust your children with? She's 6 sheets to the wind any given day, and Allie acts like she didn't even like her kids around Candace. She had to freaking call 911 before to get them out of there. So I don't really believe that Allie would just be like, Candace, can you babysit? But maybe she did. I don't know. She doesn't really seem to be that responsible of a mother either. So she didn't even watch her own children, clearly. Candace didn't. But whatever. Candace says he was like a kid to me. If Hunter was like a kid to you, Candace, then why were you permitting him to drink with you? Why were you letting him party like an adult? Is that a normal thing in your world for children to party like adults? Did Hunter really think he was in a relationship with you, Candace, and you just let it ride, thinking, oh, he's just a kid, it's okay? Because that doesn't make sense either. She should have shut that down right away. She says her and True hung out and did a lot of things together, but then as soon as Summer came up missing, they all turned on them. True seems more grown than Candace, in my opinion. Candace says True lied about them having to sleep in the truck. What about True? What about what True said about Summer overdosing on meth and coming to Allie's, shaking and crying, and they didn't take her to the hospital because they didn't want to get in trouble? Did Candace not know about that? Or was that a lie too? She says they were offered to sleep inside and they did not want to. Candace says she knows Allie got paid to tell lies and whatever else she wanted to tell. See, that's the problem with paying people for interviews, because then they're going to tell you what they think you want to hear instead of what they really think. Allie probably did embellish and lie about some things. Sucks because then everything she says is not credible. You don't know what to believe. I still listen and consider what she says, but you can't trust it. Not any more than I can trust Candace. Then Daisy stops playing that clip from the night before where Candace was talking about her past, and then the ladies are all just talking amongst themselves for a while. And if you want to know what all was said, you have to go over to the farm and listen for yourself, because I did not listen anymore after they were done talking about Candace and Don. After Don and Candace were not on there anymore, that's when I quit listening, honestly. So, yeah, but like I was saying before, if Candace can give us this much detail about her past and things that are really private to her, she's not worried about people twisting any of this. So why is she so worried about people twisting her words when it comes to anything about Summer's disappearance? Why can't we get any clear detail about June 15th, 2021? What happened in the 3 hours leading up to Summer's disappearance? Even Ronnie Lawson's asking, what happened? All right, let me see where I'm at here. Oh, okay. Well, I'm at 1 hour, so I'm going to go. And thank you all for being here. I appreciate you so much. And thank you so much for being here for Summer. We have to continue to be her voice and continue sticking up for her until she's found and until justice is served. And we have our eyes on you, Don and Candace. All right. Love you guys. Keep your head up. It's a tough world out there. We love you, Summer. No